Okay, there's a couple things I wanted to highlight from the PowerPoint that's online in Module 3. We're now in Module 3. We're working with Aperture this week. Because you guys are now in the third module, I'm not going to literally walk you through everything in the module online this week. I hope you figured out the navigation of the course. There is a reading assignment and there is a quiz. Make sure you're taking the practice quizzes. Those of you guys who are taking them, I can see that, and you guys are doing fine on the actual quizzes. One thing when we're talking about our camera, so we're getting a little bit into the technical this week, is we're gonna talk about how our camera is taking pictures. And when my camera fires, there are three things that are happening. I have aperture, I have shutter speed, and I have ISO. And in manual mode, which is at M on my camera here, I have complete control over everything. For photo 1, we're not going to get into manual mode. If you're already using it, great, keep using it. If that's something you want to play around with, you guys can play around with that on your own. It's, there's not kind of a right or a wrong way in this particular moment. This week, however, we're going to talk about aperture priority setting, which on my camera is this AV. And we're also going to talk about how those other elements briefly come into play. Next week, this is a really long module. I have it just divided into taking up 2 weeks. You'll focus on shutter speed. I don't have an ISO project. I used to, but it got a little complicated. Basically, the biggest thing you need to know about light sensitivity is that if it's a really bright sunny day outside, I don't need to have a lot of sensitivity in my camera with the light, so I might use a setting like 100. If it's a really cloudy day, there's not a ton of light outside, that's when I might set my ISO somewhere between maybe 2, 4, even 600, depending on the other settings on my camera. And then if it's a really dark room and I don't have a lot of light, that's when I'm going to be looking at those higher settings like 3200, 6400. The thing about ISO is if you use one that's really high and you don't need it, it will make a lot of noise or graininess in your pictures. So pay attention to that. The other thing that we're focusing on this week is the size of my lens opening or my aperture. So it's measured in f-stops, which is what all these f/ means. That is how wide my lens is open. And you can see that aperture is the size of the opening within the lens. If I have a small number, that means my camera lens is open really large. I have a low background sharpness, meaning that it's blurry. If you guys have portrait modes on your phones, that's what's happening, is that my phone is basically taking me and then it's making the background blurry. On the right, all the way to the right, in this diagram, I have f-stop 22, meaning I have a small opening of my lens, and because my camera has that small opening, it's able to capture more detail in the background. So depending on what the priority of your image is, it's going to change what setting you need to use. And there is more information in this slide. Please look through this. This is on D2L. This is a beautiful example, and I have this example in our photo group. You don't have to take a selfie. It's up to you. I was just in a very freaking cold shed, and I wanted to capture that moment. And honestly, I was just kind of bored and playing around with my camera. So on the left, I have a high f-stop number, f-stop 18. That means my camera's opening is pretty small. On the right, I have a low number, meaning that my camera opening is big. And you can see here on the left, I have a lot of detail in my shed. There's a lot of lines. On the right, it's all blurry. So that is what I'm talking about, that when I have these low numbers, that's how I'm getting that blurry background. When I have the high number on the right, I'm getting a lot of detail in that background image. This week on your assignment, you're gonna edit 4 photographs. You're gonna take 2 sets where you're using a high aperture setting and a low aperture setting on the same subject, and you're gonna collage them together in Photoshop. Even though I say take 4 photos, take at least 20. Photography is a numbers game. The more pictures you take, the better your pictures are gonna be. Subject is up to you. So if you don't like taking pictures of people, don't take pictures of people. If you like taking pictures of nature, go outside, take a walk. I know it's cold, but take pictures of what interests you. On my camera settings, really briefly, let me move here. So when I'm looking at camera settings for this week, I have my camera. So aperture priority mode is at AV. Again, I can leave my ISO on auto. I don't have to worry about adjusting that. I'm not going to worry about shutter speed. This number right here, my f-stop, that's what I'm going to change. On my camera, it's this dial. So you can see as I move this dial back and forth, the numbers get bigger and smaller. Then the last thing, and I talked about this last week, making sure I'm selecting the right focal point. So here it's in the center. If I have a subject that's off center, I want to change it off center. If it's at the bottom of the frame, I want to change it to the bottom of the frame. So if you had troubles with your backgrounds and getting things to focus, that's the first thing I would suggest is changing this. Other than that, you guys are, everything else you can, again, feel free to play around with the controls, but that's all you need to do this week is change that aperture setting and see how that goes for you.